Welcome to our channel where we invite you to savor the world. In this episode, we embark on a journey through the riveting tale of Nagorno-Karabakh, a region caught between two nations, Armenia and Azerbaijan. This is a story of war and peace, of unyielding resolve and sudden change, and of the delicate balance between past and present. On September 27, explosions shook Nagorno-Karabakh. It's a mountainous region nestled between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The center of relentless dispute between these countries, Nagorno-Karabakh is internationally recognized as part of Azerbaijan, but was occupied by Armenia in a war almost 30 years ago. Both countries' armies have been dug in along this line ever since. Fighting occasionally broke out, but usually died down. This time, it was different. Fierce fighting erupted in September 2020 and quickly became a full-scale war. Both sides were accused of bombing civilian areas in the region. Thousands of people died, including 100 civilians. Then, in a sudden and dramatic turn in this decades-old conflict, Armenia surrendered. A ceasefire was signed on November 9 and Azerbaijan declared victory. Nagorno-Karabakh is in the Caucasus between Europe and Asia. Historically, its population has been mostly ethnic Armenian with a substantial Azeri minority. It's dotted with medieval Armenian churches, a testament to its rich Armenian heritage. And to complicate things, in the 18th century, a kind of very big, important Azerbaijani town, the citadel of Shusha, was founded right in the middle of this territory. So this was a region that was incredibly important both to Armenians and Azerbaijanis. But for most of the 19th century, it was ruled by the Russian Empire. After the empire fell in 1918, ethnic Armenians and Azeris formed new countries, Armenia and Azerbaijan. They immediately fought over this region, but just 3 years later, Russian Soviets conquered the entire Caucasus. The Soviets eventually made Armenia and Azerbaijan republics within the Soviet Union and drew new borders. And they made Nagorno-Karabakh a semi-autonomous region in the Azerbaijani Republic despite its majority Armenian population. Ethnic Armenians there frequently asked to join the Armenian Republic but were denied. This was the Soviet Union. There was no democracy. There was no dialogue. The kind of problem festered for all those years. Still, there weren't signs of war until the Soviet Union began to loosen its grip. In the late 1980s, the Soviet Union announced a new policy called Glasnost that gave its people more political freedoms. But it had unintended consequences. Glasnost has given people freedom not only to create, but to hate. Ancient feuds erupted, such as the one between Azerbaijan and Armenia. In 1988, ethnic Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh passed a referendum to leave the Azerbaijan Republic, reviving the conflict. In Armenia, people rallied for unification, while in Azerbaijan, people responded with counter-protests. Violence soon erupted in Nagorno-Karabakh. As the Soviet Union fell apart, Armenia and Azerbaijan declared independence, escalating the conflict into a war. About 20,000 people died and over 1 million were forced to flee their homes in the region. Fighting raged for 3 more years until Armenia finally won. In 1994, both sides signed a ceasefire agreement, freezing the conflict. Armenia occupied several pieces of Azerbaijan, including Nagorno-Karabakh, which was still legally recognized as part of Azerbaijan, even though it had declared itself an autonomous region at the start of the war. This occupation displaced hundreds of thousands of Azeris from their homes. The deal was brokered by Russia, who was a formal ally to Armenia but also had a good relationship with Azerbaijan. Russia's role has always been a bit ambiguous here, because although they are the main mediator, they've had their own agenda, which is to keep their influence in the region and, if possible, get Russian troops back on the ground. While Russia was not able to send troops as part of the deal in 1994, it did end up leading a new international group with France and the US to try and find a permanent solution to the conflict. But Armenia and Azerbaijan refused to settle. Instead, Armenia renamed formerly Azeri towns and repopulated them with ethnic Armenians, while its leader called for it to be officially unified with Armenia. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan planned a comeback. From 2008 to 2019, it spent $24 billion on its military, 6 times more than Armenia, all the while reiterating its claim to Nagorno-Karabakh. On the ground, both countries maintained a military presence along the front lines, where skirmishes broke out occasionally. In the past few years, Turkey has increasingly intervened in conflicts around the region to tilt the outcomes in its favor. By sending troops into the Syrian civil war, it captured a swath of territory along its border in 2019. And in 2020, its troops turned the tide of the Libyan civil war in favor of the government, who is helping Turkey claim valuable natural gas deposits in the Mediterranean. These are also ways for Turkey to push back against its major rival Russia, who is also fighting in both conflicts. So in July 2020, when skirmishes broke out in Nagorno-Karabakh, Turkey saw an opportunity and threw its support behind Azerbaijan, whose majority Azeri population is a Turkic ethnic group. Azerbaijan is probably the closest country there is to Turkey. The two languages are extremely close. There was even talk of, one nation and two states. And they also wanted to kind of on a crude level have a thumb in the eye for Russia. In August, the two held joint military exercises in Azerbaijan, and Turkey's supply of weapons to Azerbaijan dramatically surged, which included advanced drones. I think this conflict has been planned for many months jointly in Ankara and in Baku. And so, with Turkey's support, Azerbaijan launched its attack. In just over a week, Azerbaijani soldiers had pushed at least 20 kilometers into Armenian-held territory. A few weeks later, they advanced further into Nagorno-Karabakh and also got close to the Armenian border. It wasn't a fair fight. Armenia fought back but was nearly defenseless against Azerbaijan's deadly drones. Then, on November 8, Azerbaijan won its biggest victory. It captured the historic city of Shusha, just 15 kilometers from the capital, Stepanakert. That's when Armenia agreed to surrender. The ceasefire agreement that ended the war dramatically reshapes who controls Nagorno-Karabakh. Azerbaijan will keep what it captured and take over this part from Armenia. This part remains under the control of ethnic Armenians, but they won't be alone. Russia didn't intervene in the war but brokered this deal, which calls for 2,000 of its troops to serve there as peacekeepers. Russia obviously had its ideas about how to end this conflict with Russian peacekeepers and certainly didn't rush to help Armenia. Turkey also gains a foothold here. The deal calls for the construction of a road here, which would give Turkey access to Azerbaijan. Plus, in agreement with Russia, Turkey will now send its own peacekeeping troops to the region. So while Azerbaijan is celebrating in Turkey and Russia wants strategic rewards, Armenia is in turmoil. I think Armenia is in a huge state of trauma. It's going to take a long time for it to recover from this. And the political crisis, I think, is going to be ongoing for a long time in Armenia. In Nagorno-Karabakh, ethnic Armenians in newly captured areas may be forced out. Some have already burned their homes before leaving, while Azeris who fled during the previous war could make their way back. Ultimately, the agreement does nothing to end the hostility between the two countries. Until that happens, this conflict could have another round again. It is much more a deal than it is a peace. Thank you for following this captivating story of Nagorno-Karabakh. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest content. And be sure to explore our other videos to uncover more incredible tales from around the world. Until next time, keep discovering, keep learning, and keep exploring the narratives that shape our world.